Here is the program for today's webinar. So shortly after this, we'll have the welcome remarks from our president, James Kevin T. Introduction of the guest speaker by Imelda Jolson. And then we'll have Mr. Wally Pacholka talk to us about the night sky over America's beautiful national parks. And after that, we'll open the floor for the question and answers. And with that, let me turn you over to Mr. James Kevin T., President of the Astronomical League of the Philippines, for the welcome remarks. James?
Thank you, Jun Lau. Good morning to our viewers in the Philippines, and good evening to our guests in United States and Europe. My name is James Kevin T., President of the Astronomical League of the Philippines. On behalf of the ALP, I would like to welcome you to our Astronomy Expert Series 2023. This webinar is part of ALP's International Astronomy Educational Outreach Program. Our goal is to bring renowned experts and scientists to the Filipino people and to the rest of the world. That is why the webinar is being offered free to the public, to the general public. I would like to take this opportunity also to thank ALP members who have been instrumental in putting up this program all together, especially Imelda Johnson, Edwin Aguirre, Dr. Jet Aguilar, Jun Lau, Henry Cole KCT, Andrew Ian Chan, Peter Benedicto Balinal, Eric Africa, and Justin Chan. So this is our almost 20th lecture in our speaker series. Our speaker for today is no other than Mr. Wally Pacholka, a pioneer in the field of landscape astrophotography, and he specializes in capturing national park landscape across the United States. So we have more distinguished guest speakers lined up in the coming months. So please stay tuned and please do not forget to register in advance for these future sessions. Thank you very much. And I'd like to turn it over to the program to Imelda Johnson, who will be formally introducing our speaker for tonight.
Hello, everyone. Good morning and good evening to everyone. Over 25 years ago, while I was Sky and Telescope's photo editor, I received some photo submissions that were truly mesmerizing to see. The photos were not just captivating, but rather, to me, they were inspiring. The photographer captured the true beauty and majesty of God's handiwork. It reminded me of a verse in the book of Psalms, Psalm 19, verse 1. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork. I found out later on that just like Edwin and myself, the photographer, Wally Pacholka, who has since become a longtime dear friend, got interested in astrophotography the same way we did. You see, when you're out at the dark sky site, looking up at the night sky, either through a telescope or just with the unaided eye, one sees a different kind of beauty, one that you'll like to share with others. But how? Not many people like to stay up at night looking at the sky for hours, if not overnight. In astronomy, many are called, but few are chosen. Many people are interested, but few are willing to stay out all night in the cold or in the tropics, being eaten alive by mosquitoes. But Wally is one of those few who have been chosen to do his best, to use his God-given talent to selflessly share the beauty of the night sky with the world. So Wally, during his teenage years, decided to capture the moment through a simple setup, a camera bought from a pawn shop and mounted on a tripod. He wanted to show to the world what he saw. And so through the years, Wally became a pioneer in doing landscape astrophotography, specializing in national park landscapes. His beautiful photos landed on the pages of Sky and Telescope and Astronomy magazines 29 times in National Geographic, Newsweek, Encyclopedia Britannica, even being honored several times as Life magazine's and Time magazine's Picture of the Year. In 2020, his photo of Comet Neowise graced the pages of Time magazine's 2020 Year in Review. His photos were also featured 47 times in NASA's Astronomy Picture of the Day, or APOD. And Wally's works are currently on exhibit at the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C., and at the National History Museum in New York. From a humble interest in capturing the beauty he saw at a dark sky site as a young boy growing up in Quebec, Canada, Wally's passion has become his career and business. Wally's photos are now sold in 35 of our national parks gift shops. But if you'd like to grace your home with some of Wally's masterpieces or give them as gifts, you can visit his website, astropics.com. That is astropics.com. Friends, let us give a warm welcome to astrophotographer extraordinaire, Mr. Wally Pacholka.
Thank you, Emilda. Wow, that was quite some introduction. Yeah. You call me a pioneer. I think that's because I'm the oldest guy in the group here. And if you're old enough, everything you touched as a toddler, you're pioneering. Okay, let me see if I could get up the screen here so you could look at something more pretty than myself. There we go. So the title of my talk tonight is How to Take Stunning Landscape Astrophotos for Your Walls or for major magazines or for your friends' walls or just to share with family and friends. This picture here is a picture actually of Mars when it came real close in 2003. That's Mars there on the upper right. And to get the Mars exposed in the picture, I had to overexpose the moon a little bit. So the moon kind of looks like the sun here, but it's actually the moon. And this interesting rock formation is in the Valley of Fire, Nevada. It's about an hour's drive north of Las Vegas. And the reason I went there is because this was the 50-year close approach of Mars. I wanted to take some pictures that had an interesting landscape. So what better than to take a picture of Mars from landscape that looked like Mars? So that's why I was there that particular night. Okay, I'm having trouble going to the next slide, so bear with me for a minute here. Okay, here we go. As someone mentioned earlier, I've been specializing for many, many years in shooting America's national parks. One reason for that is just because of the great beauty there, and also because many of the parks tend to have not too many buildings and light pollution, so they make great locations. However, I might say, specifically to you folks in the Philippines, that I have been shooting in the Pacific. I haven't got quite as far as the Philippines, but I have certainly shot, as you will see here, quite a number of shots in the Pacific, Easter Island, and all the Hawaiian Islands. My goal today, as this photo of me is pointing out, I'm pointing out Mars again in 2003 when it was really, really close. And Mars is actually almost looks like a full moon here, but it's actually Mars. It's kind of enlarged a little bit because of the haze in the photo. Yeah, the haze or low clouds in the sky. But in my presentation today, I like to point out the never-ending cycle of beauty that's found nightly in the heavens above, and how to capture this beauty for yourself and for sharing it with others. And I use simple equipment. I use a very simple technique. Any of you can learn how to learn what I do. And I hope I will inspire you to do the same, to capture the amazing beauty that is in the night sky and to be able to share it with others. And I also like to point out the importance of passion, just having a deep interest in something in your life. And the passion will get you further than the latest camera equipment or latest camera lenses, but it's your desire to succeed in this endeavor that will mean more than anything. So you don't need to go out and buy the latest camera equipment. Use what you have or borrow. I have several cameras. They're all used cameras, and they're all over 10 years old, which is not the saying too much in the digital field where things change every 6 months or so. So I'd like you to relax and just enjoy the presentation. As I mentioned earlier, this recording, this is a recording, and so you can come back later and take notes. And so right now, why don't you just enjoy the images? And as the prophet Isaiah says here, just take some time and lift up your eyes on high and see who has created these things. In this image here, I'm in Arizona. We're looking at the cactus, and in the night sky we see the full arch of the Milky Way, where the Milky Way hits the horizon on the left. That's dead north. You can kind of see the constellation of Cassiopeia there, the W in the yellow glow there from a nearby city. And on the right, where the Milky Way is hitting the horizon, that's dead south. So from north to south, that means that this image is a 180-degree image that I'm photographing it here. And a few odd things in the sky here is that the sky looks greenish. Not only looks greenish, it was greenish, not so much to my eye, but to the camera. And that green sky is what's called, that night, there happened to be what's called air glow. It's visible in North America in the south. It's a phenomena in the atmosphere, kind of like aurora, but it's different than aurora. Aurora, as you know, is in the north, but it's in the south. It's atmospheric phenomena, and it turns the sky kind of greenish. I couldn't see that at night. I could definitely see the Milky Way. The camera picks up maybe 3 to 4 times as much light and color as the eye can see. So a lot of my photos will look dramatic, have a lot of dramatic color. The eye, as you probably know or should know, does not see color when it is dark. Okay, moving on to the next slide. here I am on the Hana coast of the island of Maui in the Hawaiian Islands. And this is probably the most beautiful setting I've ever been in. And I'm fortunate that God allowed me to see this. And you could just imagine yourself there. It's they say Hawaii's paradise. Well, this image looks like paradise. Looking here at the sky, you can see the Big Dipper very clearly on the left. So it's tilted down. And you can see the North Star a little bit above the clouds there. To the right of the Big Dipper, North Star is just the star in the north. As you may know, it's not a really bright star. Then again, we have the full arch of the Milky Way going from north to south. So this is probably about a 220-degree view that we're looking at here. On the ground is the pools of Oahu on the Maui coast near the city of Hana. The road to get there is very treacherous. A lot of people, when they take that road, they end up buying a T-shirt. I drove the road to Hana. But anyhow, it's a gorgeous, gorgeous place. One of the prettiest places I've ever been to. My son, as a matter of fact, proposed to his wife 2 miles up that stream there on the left, where there was a big waterfall, and it was an outstanding location to propose to someone. Okay, here we are at Death Valley. Death Valley is about a 6-hour drive from my home. And in the night sky, of course, we could see the constellation of Orion there on the right side, the 3 stars of Orion's belt. And then to the left, we could see the planet Mars, is that bright star. And the glow on the horizon there is not a sunrise or a sunset, but that's actually the glow of the city of Las Vegas, which is about 100 miles away. And to show you a little technique I used to use, I don't use it too much anymore, but while my camera was taking this 20-second exposure of the shot of the 20-mule wagon in Death Valley, 20-mule borax wagon in Death Valley, I took out a flashlight and I lit up the wagon. And why did I light it up? Well, to make it show up. This was taken quite some years ago, maybe 15, 18 years ago. So the cameras were not quite as sensitive as they are today. Today, you don't really need to light up anything. The cameras are sensitive enough to pick up the foreground. But sometimes if you want to make the foreground a little bit dramatic, you could light it up for 1 or 2 seconds. And that'll be what you get. Next slide here is one of my favorite places in America. It's Monument Valley. And whenever I think of the Southwest, I think of Monument Valley. And whenever I'm anywhere near Monument Valley, I go out of my way to visit there because it is just iconic Southwest. And I took this photograph in December. I think it was 13th or 14th of December during the Gemini meteor shower. There's no Geminis in this shot, but I had just joined the organization known as TWAN, or the World at Night, and the founder, Babak Tafreshi, asked me to. He mentioned that he was going to introduce TWAN on Astronomy Picture of the Day. So he wanted to see if I could get an interesting shot to be TWAN's introduction to the world on Astronomy Picture of the Day. So I went out to Arizona here. It's about 500-600 miles to Monument Valley, which is right on the border of Arizona and Utah. And it was very cold, as you could see. There's snow on the ground. It was 17, 18 degrees. I was there for 3 nights. And but anyhow, you can't blame me for being there for 3 nights. So look at that night sky. It was just incredible. And again, similar to the Death Valley shot, we have Orion here on the right and Mars there on the left, just a different foreground scenery. And I was there for 3 nights, and I must say, it was really, really cold. It's one thing to get out of your car and take a snapshot and then get back into your warm car and drive off somewhere else. But I was there for 3 nights, and that's sometimes what you need to do to get a decent shot. Here's another one of my favorite places. This is in California. I live in Long Beach, California, right outside of Los Angeles. And this is a photograph of beautiful Yosemite Valley. And Yosemite Valley is a gorgeous location. Any time of year. In wintertime, it's picture perfect. I call this Yosemite Winter Night or Yosemite Christmas Night. I have several names for it, but for many years now, I've been using this image as my Christmas card that I mail out to friends and family. In the night sky again, we have Orion there on the right, obviously. A little bit to the left of Orion is the constellation of Gemini. You can probably pick out the 2 Gemini twins pretty clearly there. And then above is the bright object there is Jupiter. And then you can see a little bit wisp of the winter Milky Way going through the image. Now, this is Hawaii, and this is the type of photographs that any of you can take in the Philippines, because the scenery there is very similar to the scenery here. These are the pools that I shot earlier, where I mentioned my son proposed to his wife. They walked up a trail a couple miles up there where there was a huge waterfall. But in the sky here, we got Sirius there in the top left. Then, of course, Orion belt, which points to Sirius, the brightest star in the sky, on the left. And the Orion's belt pointing to the right. You can see the V shape of the horns of Taurus, the bull. And then beyond that, you could see the Pleiades, or we call them the 6 sisters here in America. I don't know why we do that, or they're the 7 sisters. I don't know why we do that, because there's 6 stars there. Okay, here I am on 10,000-foot Haleakala crater on the island of Maui. Again, we're looking at over 180-degree view. On the right side of the Milky Way, you could see the pointer stars that point to the Southern Cross, which is just dipping below the horizon there. And in the clouds, it's interesting. I'm fortunate I'm above the clouds, because below the clouds there, it's actually raining. And this is beautiful Haleakala crater. I spent 3 nights there up on the mountain. The first 2 nights were totally cloudy. And so I was just basically sleeping in the back seat of my rental car for 2 nights. And actually, the 3rd night, it was cloudy for half the night. And then after midnight, it finally cleared. And then this was the scene that God placed before me. And after those 3 nights, I went down to the coast of Hana, and I took that other shot with the waterfalls there. That first night on Hana, that was totally cloudy, and the second night was cloudy halfway. Then after about 2 o'clock, the sky opened before me, and I was allowed to take that image. Another Pacific Ocean shot, of course, is Easter Island. I was there about 10 years ago. You could see the Milky Way there and the Magellan galaxies. My history growing up in rural Canada, as Imelda mentioned, I grew up, lived in Canada until I was 16. When I was 12 and 13, I actually had a paper route. I had a paper route in the morning, got up at 5 o'clock, and then in the afternoon, I had another paper route, different paper company and newspaper company. I would deliver papers. And in the wintertime in Canada, you know, it's far up north. And so in the wintertime, it's dark at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and of course, 5 o'clock in the morning. So as I did my paper route, there in the cold winters, I looked up and I was just every night after night and morning after morning as I did my route, I was just amazed at the night sky. I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. I come home and tell my family about it. They didn't have a clue what I was talking about. I had 3 brothers, 3 sisters, and my older brother would call me a nut because I always talking about the stars. And anyhow, so I kind of got tired of that, and I said, "Well, I've seen some really good things." My mom was a teacher, and she didn't know anything about the sky, so I decided, well, I need to get myself a camera. So I actually got a hold of my dad's camera, and I forget whether I asked him or not, but I ended up breaking the shutter on it, so it could take time exposures because it was just a snapshot camera. And so anyhow, that worked, and I guess I got away with it because I'm still living today. But anyhow, that got me on the road to taking pictures of the night sky. I used the lens cap as my shutter, and that was my first attempt at taking photographs of the night sky. Year or so later, I ended up getting a better 35 millimeter camera at a pawn shop, as Imelda mentioned. But anyhow, at an early age, God just instilled in me a passion to see, enjoy, and record the night sky. I was just totally fascinated with it. But unfortunately, even after taking pictures of the night sky, my older brother still thought I was a nut. So that's been going on for years and years, and you guys know how families are. But anyhow, I got the bug, and I continued to take photos and sharing them with the astronomy club. I finally found the astronomy club in downtown Montreal, and would take the bus there once a month. Now, when I was 16, my dad moved the family to Long Beach, California, to work in the aircraft industry that was really booming at that time here. And I was sorely disappointed initially with the family's move because I couldn't see anything in Long Beach, which was part of the Los Angeles, 7 million people or whatever. So I couldn't see anything in the city anymore. So I was really disappointed until I discovered the nearby national park of Joshua Tree. And once I got my driver's license, I was heading for the hills and for Joshua Tree. And I was in paradise because the national parks have just outstanding scenery, and they have generally dark skies. And so that got me on the path of shooting the night sky over America's national parks. So I had a career in accounting for 20 years. And then after that, I was very good at setting up accounting systems, and the companies would say after things were set up, the companies would say, "Well, thank you, Wally. You did a great job setting up our accounting system and computer systems. We don't need you here anymore." So I end up going from company to company every 2 to 3 years, setting up accounting systems, and it was always the same old story. So after doing that for about 20 years, I said, "Wow, wouldn't it be nice to uh, to do something on my own?" And so I started. I had been, taking photos of the national parks for all the time I was working as an accountant, going out there on weekends, and so on and so forth. But I eventually broke the cord and went full time into shooting the night sky over the national parks. And so basically what I do, I hike the national parks at night. I hike alone. I know it's not the safest thing in the world, but I'm still alive, and it's been a blast. Here I am in Bryce Canyon, hiking the Queen Garden Trail, which connects to the Navajo Trail, and this is the Milky Way at night. And this is an indication of the modern digital cameras. I believe this was taken with a Canon 6D, and this is just a 20-second exposure, picking up. Excuse me, picking up everything in the night sky in 20 seconds. Don't need a clock drive or anything, and it picks up the entire landscape. Here I am on Haleakala, 10,000 foot, hiking the crater. It was 11 miles, hiked it over 2 days, 2 nights. And but frankly, as you could see, it was like I was hiking on the moon. I mean, it's like I was on the dark side of the moon. Just an incredible experience. And this is the scene that God laid before me. And keep in mind, I'm just a photographer. I just capture what is there. I'm not creating this on a computer. This is what was there, and this is what my camera recorded. Yeah. So I'm fortunate to have seen this, and I'm glad for you folks that I was able to capture this, that it was clear, and I could share with you that amazing experience. This is one of my older cameras. I believe it was a Canon 5D. And, I've been shooting this guy for 50 years. So obviously all the cameras I've used are older than any camera you would ever buy. So it's like I mentioned before, it's not the camera. I sometimes show people a beautiful photograph and they say, "Wow, Wally, you must have a really good camera." And I say, "Yeah, but it's really not the camera." This photo was taken about 20 years ago. That's when I had black hair and white teeth. Now I have white hair and black teeth. The basic equipment. I say here any camera, basically any any 35 millimeter or modern digital camera like the Canon 6D or Nikon D750. That's the camera I use, by the way, the Nikon D750. It's a 12-year-old camera, but it takes excellent images of the night sky. And so I don't need the latest camera with all the bells and whistles. Okay. So basically any camera, as long as it has a manual setting. In other words, everything's not all automatic. Okay. I use a standard lens. The standard lens on any camera is generally, a 50 millimeter. I go wider than that because I want to get more sky. And so I use a 24 millimeter lens, which gives me basically twice the width of a 50 millimeter lens. And of course, I use a tripod. Now, other than equipment, the most important thing, as I kind of mentioned, is you need to have a reason why you're going to do this. For me personally, I like to share the beauty of the night sky to the world. Just like earlier, I wanted to show the night sky to my brother and family and my mom and dad and my teachers and friends. That has been kind of expanded. I love sharing with people all over the place the beauty that is before us in the night sky. And for me, also personally, I like I like sharing the joy of capturing God's creation that is displayed day after day and night after night in the heavens above. The basic settings on the camera. So you have manual focus. You set the focus on infinity, of course, but use the manual focus. Don't let the camera kind of zoom in and out automatically. It'll never give you any focus. So set the focus manually. Set the lens wide open or close to wide open. When the lens is wide open, you're letting in more light, so you're picking up more stars. I say wide open or one stop higher. There are some lenses that don't give the stars quite as sharp as they need to be if the camera is shot, if the lens is shot wide open. So I often close it down. Like I have my 24 millimeter lens is a 1.4 lens. I close it down to an f2 lens. So it lets in a little bit less light, but then the stars are sharp. And then for my 24 millimeter lens, I expose for 20 seconds. And that will freeze the stars. It'll freeze the Earth's rotation if you take exposure for 20 seconds. In 20 seconds, the Earth is still moving, but it's not going to, the stars won't show as moving in your photograph. Excuse me. There's a rule of 500. Basically, take the millimeter of the lens and divide it into 500, and that will tell you the exposure you need to keep the stars as points, and it's as illustrated there. And the ISO or speed of the camera, I set it to 1600. Now, my fundamental rule is I try to capture something interesting in the sky plus something interesting in the landscape. That way you have a double whammy. You have two things of interest in your photograph. And it's kind of like the real estate rule, location, location, location. If you're taking pictures from your backyard with the telephone wires hanging all over the shot, it's not going to be a good image. And so you need to go someplace. You need to scout out places during the daytime. Say, hey, this would be a good place at night. You know, as long as it's in a dark location. And so location is so important. And as you could see in my photographs, you know, I've gone to interesting places, and it takes effort to go there, frankly. Okay, so using these techniques, I've been published all over the place. And you could be published too, extensively. I've been in Life magazine many, many times. I've been in many encyclopedias. This kind of encyclopedia kind of took the cake. They said they called me up, or they sent me an email, said they want to use one of my images on the cover. I didn't realize that they didn't only want the image on the cover of one book, but on all 22 books of that encyclopedia, they put a cover. So you never know what's going to come up or where your images are going to end up. This is one of the issues of National Geographic. On the right, there's a picture of the Milky Way over Haleakala crater. Beautiful location. But I'd like you to bring your attention actually to the image on the left and to someone who is my hero, so to speak, and that is King David. And King David, as you know, was the king of Israel. And before he was a king, he, as the he slew the giant Goliath, and that's what kind of made him famous. But why King David is famous to me is what he wrote down. And as you probably know, those of you that know the story, before David killed Goliath, he was a shepherd, or even at that time, actually, he was a shepherd. So what do shepherds do? Well, they watch sheep, and they watch sheep by night, and as well as by day. But he knew the night sky intimately, and because later on in life, God inspired him to write Psalm 19. And I'm just going to read it here. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the earth shows his handiwork. This next verse is really my kind of life theme I've got from this, where it says, day after day, the heavens, pour forth speech. Night after night, they declare knowledge. So in other words, the sky is telling us something, pour forth speech. They declare knowledge. We can learn things. And then the final verse is kind of talks about the universality of astronomy. There is no speech or language where their voice is not heard. And how true that is of astronomy, which is the study of the night sky. So just as that verse says, day by day and night by night, so just as the sun rises day by day, so too does the moon, which we all know, and the planets and the stars, in a continuous nightly event performance to all who will but look. This is something that's happening every day. The sun is rising, the moon is rising, sun is setting, moon is setting, Orion is rising, Orion is setting. These are all opportunities for people like you and me to go out there and photograph these events, because these events are happening. It's not like the 50,000 year close approach of Mars happens at every 50,000 years, although Mars comes close every 2 years, and so we could photograph that event every 2 years. And our comets come by bright comet comes by every 20 years. So it's great to photograph a comet when they're around, but when comets are not around, there's other things that are around. As we could see here, here's by the coast here, about 20 miles where I live. There's the moon, planet Saturn, and the planet Venus. There's events happening all the time. Here's the planet Jupiter over a rock formation in Devil's Postpile, about 6 hours away from me. Here's a full moon or a super moon where the moon's a little bit bigger. And I ran down to the coast and took this shot. Here's the moon and the planet Mercury there close to the horizon. This is in Cabo San Lucas, about 1,000 miles south of me. And you could tell them it's 1,000 miles south of me because you look on the right, you could see the pointer stars to the Southern Cross, which looks like a small cross or like a kite. And I'm at latitude 32 degrees. So here in Long Beach, I cannot see the Southern Cross, but 1,000 miles south, in Cabo, Baja, Mexico, you can see the Southern Cross. And of course, in the Philippines, I believe it's about 10 degrees higher in the sky. So that's an easy object for you guys. But here in the night sky, in the center, we have the moon rising, and then close to the sun there is the planet Mercury. Close to the sun, close to the sun glow. Here's a part of the nightly activities. As I mentioned, moon rising and setting, planets rising and setting, 2 opportunities for each of these every night, rising and setting. Here's Orion rising over Rainbow Bridge in Utah off Lake Powell. To get to this location, I had to drive, I think, 600 miles and then take a boat 50 miles, and they dropped me off there overnight, and I stayed there overnight, saw this wonderful scene, and then the next day took the boat back. Here's again Orion rising along with Sirius in the beautiful Mojave Desert. Here's Orion rising and reflected in Lake Tahoe in Nevada. Lake Tahoe is a huge lake. It's about 20 miles wide. I was there for 3 nights, and I was very, very fortunate to have the third night to have such a big lake like that, just like glass. And so you could see Orion reflected there in the water, and you could see Taurus reflected. And look at the colors of the stars in the reflection. The colors are much more pronounced in the reflection because the water is taking out some of the, so to speak, overexposure that's in my exposure in the sky, and so you could see colors much more vividly. Like look at Orion's nebula there, that pink object is very, very clear in the reflection. Here's Orion rising upside rising, or probably it's setting here over East Island. Milky Way rising over Death Valley. The Southern Triangle and part of the Milky Way over Death Valley. Now this here is probably one of the most amazing places I've been to, and I've been to a lot of places, but this is an Indian cave in Utah. It's called False Kiva. It's because those stone rocks that are in a circle there are often indicative of an Indian dwelling where there's a room beneath that. But in this case, it's just a circle of rocks. I don't know, it was a fire pit or something, but it was not a kiva. Anyhow, so the name of this cave is called False Kiva. You might look it up. But this view probably has not changed in 5,000 to 10,000 years, because look, there's no buildings out there. The faraway mesa, it might have eroded maybe a foot or two or several yards, but from this distance you wouldn't even notice the erosion. So this view has been seen by countless tribes through the ages, and of course in the night sky, that's the Milky Way up there, and with Jupiter next to it. It's just an incredible place. I've been there probably at least eight times. Here's an exposure longer than 30 seconds. It's probably about a minute or two. It's a Persian meteor pointing at the north, and my camera's pointing at the North Star, so you can see a little bit of the rotation. Here's a bright meteor over the Badlands and the deserts above or to the east of San Diego. And of course, that's the Big Dipper up there. Huge fireball through Orion, between Orion and Taurus, the bull, next to Cap Rock in the Joshua Tree National Park. Cap Rock is a famous location there. I try to take pictures at famous locations. I'm not after the prettiest picture in the world. I'm after pictures of famous places. So because famous places tend to well, they're famous for a reason because people have been there, and I sell my product as souvenirs in the national parks. So people go to the famous places; they don't go out to the off-beaten places. So I tend to not just try to take pretty pictures, but I try to take decent pictures of famous places, and that because more people go there, and it's so to speak good for business. This is a interesting park in the deserts east of San Diego. That's south of me, about 100 miles. This is Anza Borrego. And in the desert there, some artist has made it's hard to believe, but 130 metal sculptures. And this sculpture is bigger than a two-story house. It's a dragon. And so I love going there during meteor showers, because the advantage of a location like this, and you could think about locations like this where you live too, is that the advantage of a location like this is you could just walk around that structure and find something interesting in the sky. And of course, I always picked out Orion and the winter star constellations, which are all gathered there in the east. So it's great to have an object that you're able to walk around and get the stars in the background. And there's a shot of a gem-emitted meteor there. And my odds of getting a meteor are probably one out of every 300 shots. So I take 300 shots, in other words, 320-second exposures. And I'll start off with exposure number 1, and it'll be 20 seconds. And of course, nothing falls in the first 20 seconds. So what do? Well, I take a second one, 20-second exposure. And then I just continue that until I get something. So that's kind of the mechanics behind catching something is taking a lot of pictures. I don't show you the pictures that don't turn out. I'm just showing you the pictures that turn out. And once in a while you get a monster. And this is a huge fireball. As it's going through the 70 miles of atmosphere, you could see it's burning blue-green up in the upper atmosphere where there's no oxygen. Like if I picked you up and brought you 70 miles above the Earth, you would turn blue-green too. But as the meteor falls down further and gets oxygen, it burns more of a reddish and white bluish color. In 2013, my wife got sick, and one of her bucket lists was to see the aurora. And so we went to Alaska, and there's Mount Denali. Mount Denali is usually clouded over for 95% of the people that go there, but lo and behold, it was clear that night, along with the Big Dipper, and great aurora display was before us. Here I am with my wife and son in the Dolomite Mountains in Italy. And this is a wide panoramic. You could see Orion there on the right, and above it, as normal, is the Taurus, the bull, and above that is the Pleiades. And to the right, left of Orion, we got the Gemini twins, a blue star and a white yellow star. And the far left, we got the Big Dipper, pointing up at the North Star and the Little Dipper. This is an amazing scene. So these displays of the night sky are just worldwide, beauty everywhere you go. My son lives in Boston, and last September we visited him for a week, and then we headed up to Acadia National Park on the coast of Maine, right under Canada. And this was the scene before us. Gemini twins straight ahead, Orion there on the right. Acadia is a fantastic sight. Very, very dark. I recommend anyone that's on the East Coast, Boston particularly, to go up to Arcadia. Fabulous place for shooting the night sky. Here we got Sirius, Orion, Taurus, and the Pleiades, and even Mars is in there, shining brightly. This is a gorgeous, gorgeous coast. Again, we got the beautiful sequence of Sirius. Look at Sirius with the reflection in the night sky. I don't think I've ever seen a reflection in the ocean or of a body of water of a star. I've seen it of the moon and the sun, but not of a star. It shows you how clear it was there. And of course, we have Orion, and then Taurus, and then the Pleiades. By the way, does anyone know a different name or a more modern name for the Pleiades? Let you think about that for a minute. But you guys see this every day, and that's Subaru. Subaru, the 6 stars that are on all the Subaru cars have 6 stars, and that's because Subaru means is translation of the Pleiades in Japanese, obviously. And there's a verse in scripture in Job where, you know, the story of Job, where Job was a very rich man, and God decided to take away his riches. And so after that, Job was having a discussion with God that's recorded in scripture, and God is basically explaining to Job that he's God and that Job is not. And one thing that God points out to Job, he says, hey, can you bind the chains of the Pleiades, or can you loose the belt of Orion? And basically by that statement, God is saying that the Pleiades, that he's bound them. Okay. And as we all know today, the Pleiades are something like 150 stars. They're a cluster of stars. And so they all move together in space, just like our solar system follows the sun. Wherever the sun goes, the solar system follows it. So the Pleiades, those stars are all bound. Whereas the stars of Orion, like Orion's belt, those stars they look like, from our perspective, they look like they're together. But actually, they're at great distances from each other. So as they rotate around the galactic core, those stars of Orion are being loosed, or they're being spread out. Anyhow, that's just a side note, nothing to do with photography, but just something to do with the accuracy of some of those texts. Here we are in my favorite place, Joshua Tree, obviously a winter scene. And this is the Geminids. That's my closest place. It's only 2.5 hours to go to Joshua Tree, and for me, that's close. And this is an old pioneer building there. Here's Crap Rock, which we've seen before with the Arch of the Milky Way over it. Here's the Skull Rock, named very appropriately, again in Joshua Tree. And this is, I guess you might say it's a photo of a lifetime, you know, even for someone like me that's always out taking pictures of the night sky and taking pictures of meteors. And I was out in the desert in the Mojave taking imaging with 2 other guys, and this monster of a fireball appeared before me. And luckily, I had my camera open. One of my buddies had the camera pointed in the same direction, but he was in between frames, so he missed this. And somehow I was blessed to catch this. you'll see this image often for the Geminids. It'll be published in many images or many outlets, printed or online a lot. You'll see that image in advertising the Persian meteor shower or the Gemini meteor shower. Here, relatively close to home, 6-hour drive, the Milky Way over Sequoia National Park. Yeah, Northern California, there's Mount Lassen, a gorgeous Milky Way, gorgeous Lake Manzanita. I was there. It's people from all around the world, visit national parks. It's great to chat with people, but just picture yourself here, just looking at this scene. I truly been gifted, and I'm pleased that I was allowed to capture this scene for you and for other people to enjoy. Here's a famous Devil's Tower in Wyoming. They made a movie of this in 1976, I believe, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. One of the first decent sci-fi movies. Anyhow, this is one of my favorite shots. This is Old Faithful Geyser in Yellowstone. I was vacationing there with a family. We went river rafting down the Snake River in the Grand Tetons, which is close by, and I took off 3 days by myself. By the way, in my shooting, I always shoot alone. It's the only way to be efficient. So anyhow, we were there for 10 days camping. I took 3 nights alone. Went to Old Faithful here. I had to spend 3 nights. I would have just spent 1 night if it was clear, but I spent 3 nights basically sleeping in my car in the parking lot and just setting my alarm. Old Faithful will go off every 90 minutes. So I'd set my alarm 30 minutes before that, run out there, hoping it'd be clear, and it wouldn't be clear, and I'd have to go back. And did that for 3 nights. Finally, in the 3rd night, the clouds cleared. You could see the dark clouds here in the sky. And here we have Old Faithful Geyser going up, and it's going straight up, but in the 20 seconds, the wind's blowing a little bit. And that's the planet Jupiter up there in the Milky Way. Here's the beautiful, beautiful Grand Tetons, Milky Way on the left, Big Dipper on the right. Again, getting some air glow here, the greenish color in the sky. And going towards the north, that reddish color is probably a aurora. Fabulous Bryce Canyon, one of my favorite places, hiking down there with the incredible night sky. This is Crater Lake in Oregon. The coast of Northern California. Catalina Island, 20 miles off the sea from Long Beach. Baja California, see the Southern Cross. Sunrise and the planet Mercury over Haleakala Crater. Haleakala Crater, Milky Way. Again, Haleakala Crater. On the left here is the planet Mars, and then a moonbow, which is caused by the moon being behind me and the fog, water particles of the fog, creating a moonbow in front of me. Here's a close-up of that. It's kind of a rare event. Here's the coast of Hana. Here's a close-up of that other image I showed you earlier. This is a Bali High on the island of Kauai. This is the island of Kauai, not a Pali trail, 11-mile trail. I just went 2 miles in. Here's a day shot, and again, the night shot. Top of a Mauna Kea on the big island, 13,000 feet, incredible night sky. Big island, the volcano there, Milky Way. Volcano with the Southern Cross. Here's Three Stooges there close to the volcano. And a few minutes later, I was standing there. Probably the most dangerous thing I ever did, but thrilling. Easter Island. This image on the cover of a book by Babak Tafreshi, Easter Island. Every year, Time Magazine issues the year in review, what happened this year. This is 2020, the year of COVID. It was also the year of Comet Neowise. I knew Comet Neowise would be visible for 2 weeks, so I went to 10 national parks in 10 days. And the first stop was Joshua Tree. It was 108 degrees there. Then I was silly enough to jump in the fire and go to Death Valley, where it was 118 degrees. And I said, wow, that's for the birds. And I headed for Bryce Canyon, where I got this image of Comet Neowise. And then went to Bryan Head, again, 11,000 feet, nice and cool. Bryan Head again. Is the Comet Neowise over the Valley of Fire, Nevada. And then I came home for a couple of days, waited for the comet to swing around the sun. And here it is in the White Mountains in the evening under the Big Dipper, of course. Here's a close-up here. I'm using 130 millimeter lens. Again, no guiding on this. It's just like let me see, like a 4-second exposure. This is wide angle, again, 20-second exposure over Mammoth Mountain. This is 135 millimeter, again, 4 seconds on a tripod, no guiding. Here's the comet and a meteor over Mono Lake, rather. Here's over Lake Tahoe, the same. My reward for that was to get in the year in view. And this image of the comet over the Valley of Fire. I've been in time before in 1997, when Great Comet Hale-Bopp came by. I ran to the desert, made tons of trips out to Joshua Tree. That comet was incredible. This is a 130 millimeter lens. This was guided. The NASA would publish anyone's image if they sent a picture to NASA. That was one image that was published by them. And this image ended up making Time Magazine Picture of the Year for Comet Hale-Bopp. In 2003, as I mentioned, the close approach of Mars. I went to a place that looked like Mars, kind of, the landscape. This image made Time Magazine picture for that year. And then Life Magazine also wanted a picture for that year. And then, as I mentioned, I went to a place that looked like Mars, taking pictures of Mars. And here's my Martian elephant, just a rock formation that's a red, orange Utah rock color. Doesn't look like an elephant. And then what takes the cake here was this shot here. is called Poodle Rock. And it certainly looks like a poodle. It looks like the poodle laying down. You can see the eyeball, the big dog nose, the teeth, the small dog nose. And frankly, taking this picture was pretty easy. What took the time was chiseling that rock to make it look like a dog. That's what took the time. Okay, just winding things up here. Just going to quote Job. But ask the animals, and they will teach you, or the birds of the air, and they will tell you. Or speak to the earth, and it will teach you. Or let the fish of the sea inform you. Which of all these does not know that the hand of God has done this? And the book of Romans we read, for since the creation of the world, God's invisible attributes, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, so that man being understood by what has been made, so that man is without excuse. So thank you for lifting up your eyes on high and seeing who has created these things. Thanks for spending a night under the stars with me.
Thank you very much, Wally. I think you floored us with all of your wonderful and amazing images, and hopefully all of our attendees are now inspired to go out and take pictures of the night sky. Hoping to at least get a glimmer or take a little of what you have presented to us.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Thank you for having me.
oh, yeah, it was our pleasure. Thank you very much, Wally. At
You're
this
welcome.
point, at this point, we would like to open the floor to questions. So for our attendees, you can pose your questions by clicking on the Q&A tab on your Zoom interface and asking your question there. But I think we can start off with a few questions of our own. So a lot of the places you've gone to are national parks and state parks. What arrangements do you normally make with the national parks or state parks when you do these photography sessions?
Usually I don't make any arrangements. I just go in the park and shoot. The only exceptions has been like the Indian parks, like Chaco Canyon. They have a very strict rule. No one could be in there at night. It's closed down. And I had to buy a photo permit to take photos. And then not only buy a photo permit, but well, it was like a couple $100, but what I also need to hire, I need to hire a monitor. In other words, a park ranger to walk with me and make sure I didn't walk off with any Indian pottery or something. So that was ended up being a little expensive. That was like $60 an hour or something like that. And but that's the exception. All the national parks, except for the Indian ruin parks, where they don't want people going in there and damaging things, I have full access at night.
Okay. Yeah. So the question I think right now is for in terms of security and safety. What are the things you normally do? Because I think you're going into a lot of these remote places by yourself. So what
Yes,
advice would you be able to give?
yeah. I've run into really every type of animal you can think of. I've run into porcupines. I've run into 3 skunks at the same time. I've run into obviously bears, many bears. The older I get, the more scared I get of bears. I do carry kind of not a taser, but a sparker with me that makes a loud noise. So I'm hoping that would scare away like a mountain lion. That's my biggest fear is the mountain lions. but I've never seen any. I've seen bobcats, and I've seen green eyes looking at me out of the forest, like 4 green eyes. And then when I put a flashlight on, it's just simply deer. And but initially it's real scary to see green eyes looking at you and out of the blackness. But I've been safe. You know, I know I hike alone, and I know that's not always the safest thing to do. But keep in mind, I'm not bushwhacking, going through the bush on my own. I'm following national park trails, which have thousands of people on those trails in the daytime. Okay, so they're well-worn trails, and most of the trails are very well marked. And so I've I've gotten lost a few times, but I'm still around. I encourage people to visit the national parks, and if you're too nervous about it, go with someone. You don't have to go alone. That's been my choice.
Okay, thank you, Wally. I
Sure.
think in some of my adventures trying to take pictures, I was a little concerned about scorpions or snakes, especially in the desert
Yeah,
areas.
yeah, I'm terrified of snakes, frankly. But yeah, I've been to like Joshua Tree nearby, and the Mojave Desert is known for rattlesnakes. And but I've been extremely fortunate. At every step I take in the dark, I look. Okay, so I'm aware of my surroundings. I don't go too close to bushes. You know, I I watch every step when I'm walking in the dark in snake country. And I've seen snakes, but I've not. I haven't had a fright encounter where I'm walking by and all of a sudden the snake is looking me in the eye or something like that. I've God God has protected me. I guess I could put it that way. Uh, but I've known people that have gone out for a hike and they see 3 snakes, and I haven't had that experience. I thank God. And scorpions, there are scorpions there. I've seen scorpions, and uh, but that's life. There's good and bad and the ugly.
Okay, okay, thank you, Wally.
Sure.
Um, for all of the pictures that you've shown, are these single exposures or are any of these composites?
Okay. All of them contain the sky and the earth. And in other words, they're single shots. Okay. But let me clarify that for the panoramics. Okay, where I'm shooting the whole arch, the Milky Way. Those shots I turn the camera vertically. Okay. And then I start shooting like Milky Way on the left, in other words, the north. So I'll take a shot. And remember, I'm only using a 24 millimeter lens. So a 24 millimeter lens doesn't cover 180 degrees of sky. So I take a shot on the left, then I move the camera over to take another shot. I maybe overlap the first shot 50% or 30%. And so I'll take 7 or 8 shots, or even 9 or 10 shots sometime to all along the horizon. And then I'll stitch those later on in photo stitching software. Now, very much like your iPhone or your digital camera, you could switch it on to panoramic mode, and you could take a sweep with your iPhone camera of the scene before you or your family, or usually it's landscape where you do this, and the camera will magically stitch it all together. You can't do this, shoot the night sky that way with an iPhone, but you get the idea. The panoramic capture that whole view. You use several shots stitched together. But I don't take any so-called composites where you take a picture of the sky in one location and a picture of the landscape in another location and insert them together. I never do that. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Oh, thank you for the answer, Wally. Yeah, because sometimes we're seeing pictures by others where they are composites, but
Yes,
it's not mentioned. So it's a little
yes,
misleading.
yes. Yeah, it definitely is misleading.
Mhm. Okay.
Yeah, like a Comet
Um,
Neowise, Comet Neowise, I went to 10 parks in 10 days. If I was doing composite, I could just take a picture of Comet Neowise from one park and then composite those the next 10 parks, and I don't need to go anywhere. Just need to go to one location. So yeah, that's being dishonest in my opinion. Yeah,
yeah. Okay. Yep. Thank you.
sure.
We have a question from Bob Beal. How do you create such long, thin spikes around the brightest stars in your photos, or it could be the planets?
Okay.
Do you use a filter?
Yes. Yeah, in my older pictures, I used to use what's called it's actually called the star filter. Photographers would usually use the star filter for cityscapes where you would have the street lights giving a little starburst and it would make cityscapes uh, really pretty. And I started using that initially when I was taking night photographs to help the constellation, the brighter stars stand out. So in other words, like if you take a picture of the Big Dipper with a star filter, it will make only the stars of the Big Dipper stand out, and the rest of the stars would be normal. And so it's easier to point out the constellations to people when you use such a filter, because the constellations, which are a little bit brighter than the other stars, they all stand out. So I used that technique up until maybe 10 years ago, and then I switched to a soft focus filter. And soft focus will kind of do the same thing, but you don't get the big spikes. Uh, Sometime using the star filter, like Jupiter, the spikes were just too big. And so I said to myself, well, this is really not realistic. Because you don't see that when you look at the night sky. You don't see Jupiter's big spikes. And so I got away from that. I use a soft focus filter, like people use for portraits.
Okay. Yep. Well, thank you for that, Wally.
Sure.
And one question coming from Jay Cisco. Many of your photos that show large prominent landscape features are very well lit. That I find it difficult to believe you use light painting as you did for the 20 mule team sled or train.
Yes. Yes.
Would you mind commenting how you manage those very well lit photos? Do you take landscape features before it gets dark?
No, never do that again. That's not honest. Yeah. I actually mentioned it in my talk that the modern digital cameras pick up the landscape uh, where you don't need to light it. Like here, this picture in our background here of Bryce Canyon. I'm not lighting that. The close rocks are close enough for me to light up, but the far away rocks they're several hundred yards away. They're all even. That's all evenly lit. That's being lit by the night sky. Of course, in this case, it's almost dawn. You know, the comet is close to the sun. The sun is close to rising, so you could understand it being uh, the rocks being lit, just with twilight. But I'm sure that person was referring to even my Milky Way shots, which shot dead at night. The landscape is lit up, and again, it's just modern day digital cameras. If you're using ISO 1600 and 20-second exposure, uh, the camera is picking up all of that dark landscape. Now, I must admit that in the processing the photo, I do have to lighten up the foreground, in software to make the foreground, balance the light from the sky. but it's not certainly it's not a composite. Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. There's a sort of corollary question to that one. Do you only take pictures when it's on dark moonless nights, or do you also take pictures when the moon is in the sky?
Yeah, I try to avoid the moon, but if you recall the picture of the Grand Tetons, where we had Milky Way on the left and the Big Dipper on the right, and I was talking about the sky glow there with the sky being green. That picture was actually taken with I believe it was almost a quarter moon just rising. It is about 5-10 minutes rising on the horizon behind me. So that was lighting up the grass and lighting up the Grand Tetons. So that's one of my few, so to speak, moonlit shots. If you look back at that when you look at the YouTube, you'll see what I mean. The colors in that shot are very vivid because there's so much moonlight there on the scene.
Okay. Yes, because sometimes we get advice similar to what you had provided, where the moon is still low on the horizon,
Yes,
so that it adds light to the landscape, so like a
yes,
natural light painting.
yes, yeah. That's a technique that I used in this case, as I mentioned. But generally, you don't need to use that. Uh, uh, the digital cameras nowadays will pick up the full landscape, uh, even though with software you may need to bring out, brighten up the landscape a little bit to make it, balance with the light that's coming from the sky. So I wouldn't
Um,
restrict your shooting times for just when the moon is rising low on the horizon.
okay. Yep. Well, thank you, Wally.
Sure.
Uh, One question that was raised as well was, let me see. When you're planning for your landscape astrophotography, so aside from, let's say, planning for the location and everything, do you use anything like planetarium programs or anything to plan out when you need to be in the site? Where would you be in the site, or which site you would
Uh,
be? So do you do like go there in the mornings first, like use a compass or something?
no, I use I'm quite familiar with the night sky, and yeah, I do advise scoping the landscape out, and yeah, I do use a compass to say, okay, what's going to be, I find a landmark and I say, okay, what's going to be behind here at nighttime? It's just, when I look at this landscape, am I facing east or north? Or yeah, I do go through that in my head, and and uh, and plan that way. Uh, but very often, like when I go to a new national park, I'll try to scout it out as much as I can during the daytime, because at night you can't see any landscape. I mean, it's dark, so you frankly need to scout out places in the daytime if to have any success at night.
Okay. Yes. Well, thank you very much, Wally.
Sure.
Um, there is a question about for landscape photographers who want their images to be quite large or to blow it up. So there is always the balance between graininess of the image and of course getting the right exposure. So I know you're recommending like ISO 1600. How do you find that sort of when you take the balance of the graininess of an image and enough time to capture what you want to capture?
Yeah. Well, that's one reason why I stick with 1600. You know, cameras can go much, much higher than 1600, and especially nowadays. And so I stick with the 1600 because that works. You know, matter of you know, as I mentioned, like my 24 millimeter lens, I use that except when I'm shooting comets where I need to sometimes get a little close, like this shot of Neowise behind us here or in front of us here. Uh, my standard lens for shooting nightscapes is 24 millimeter. So my camera setting is the same when I'm shooting all of these landscape shots. So I could basically super glue my camera at, you know, f2 and ISO 1600 and 20-second exposure. I could super glue my camera, and I could take 95% of the shots that I'm taking.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you, Wally.
Sure.
I think we have one or few more questions. And again, to our attendees, if you have a question for Wally, please click on the Q&A button on your Zoom interface to ask the questions. Right now, we'd like to open it up to our panelists and ask if you have questions for Wally. Okay, so if there are no questions, there is one other question. So with SpaceX having all of these satellites out there now, have you tried doing landscape photography recently with like and getting your images ruined by satellite trails or SpaceX?
This one minor case, maybe 3 years ago, I was shooting in Joshua Tree, meteor shower, and a SpaceX launch took place. And actually, it was kind of cool. Right from the horizon, I could see maybe 20 satellites all in a row that lit up the image. But it was gone after 1 minute, just like any satellite, going across the sky. So that bothered me for 1 minute, and so it did not affect me. Now that doesn't mean to say when there's 10,000 or 20,000 of these things up there that it would affect me. So far it has not affected me.
Okay.
June,
Okay,
I have a
thank you.
question. June,
Yes,
I
go
have a
ahead.
question for Wally. Wally, before I ask my question, I just want to say that your photos inspired me and Imelda to visit Acadia National Park.
Oh,
Because,
really?
yeah, we live in the suburbs of Boston, so we're only like 4.5 hours away from
Yes.
Acadia. So
Yes.
it's like 280 miles. So maybe
That's
this yeah, one of these days we should go up there and spend some time camping. So
Yes,
we'll have more-
you will absolutely love Acadia.
Yeah.
It is much more remote than I envisioned it being, and I was very, very pleased with Acadia. And there's just so many places you could photograph at night. I was there, as I mentioned, I was there with my son and his wife and my wife last year, and we toured the park during the daytime, all of us. But then I went out at night and went to the locations, and in 2 nights I was able to shoot. I think it was 11 or 12 different locations, which is quite a few in 2 nights. So I was very pleased with the park and with the many locations and just how extremely dark it was.
Great. Yeah, we'll give
So
it a
you
try.
got I'm glad to hear you're heading up there.
So Wally, I know you said you always use your 24 mm lens, and
Yes.
I was wondering, have you tried a fisheye lens? Have you tried using a fisheye lens?
Yes, I have. And it just it didn't work for me. Yeah, I'd much rather take a series of panel shots, either vertically or rather horizontally or vertically to capture the scene that I want, rather than one fisheye. One
Okay.
fisheye, captures all that sky, but then I can't use my soft focus filter on it, so the constellations don't stand out. When I look at the photograph, I just see a whole bunch of stars, and it's not easy to pick out the constellations. Whereas I think people enjoy, seeing the Big Dipper and seeing Orion stand out a little bit, and it makes the photograph more interesting to look at than just looking at, hundreds and hundreds of stars that don't seem to make sense.
Great. And do you have any plans, Wally?
I'm sorry. Say again, please.
And Wally,
No, I'm getting that your talk is it's being garbled there somehow. I didn't understand that. Can you repeat?
yeah, Wally, I was wondering if you also have any plans of shooting the sky from the southern hemisphere.
Yeah, he has done.
Well, yeah, I've been to Easter Island. Yeah, and no immediate plans to do that. Although I would like to go to the Philippines one day. That's kind of on my bucket list, so to speak.
Oh, okay. Now, I was thinking about Chile, farther south.
Yeah. I've been to Chile, and I shot the north of Santiago, and
Okay.
then I shot Easter Island, which of course is owned by Chile and 2,000 miles off the coast. But oh yeah, you probably mean the desert there. I forget the name of it, but the very famous Chilean desert. That's
the Atacama.
it's all astronomers. Yeah, astronomers' dream. And yeah, I would like to go there someday. Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Well, Wally,
Sure.
maybe next time you're up in Boston, we'll go to Acadia and shoot together.
Yes. Yeah, we could talk about that. Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Well, thank you.
Okay. So if there are no other questions from the panelists, we have one question from Handy. What's your thought on artificial intelligence playing a part in astrophotography?
Wow. Yeah, I guess I don't have an opinion on that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. 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 Sorry, I haven't thought too much about that.
Okay. Yeah, I guess for some of us, it's getting harder to distinguish when things have been manipulated with AI.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Okay. Yep. So if there are no more questions, thank you very much, Wally, for all of your patience in answering all the questions from our attendees and from our panelists. So Andrew, can you move to the next slide? So in behalf of the AOP, we'd like to present this certificate of appreciation for your generosity in your time and in preparing this presentation for us and for our attendees. So this certificate from the Astronomical League of the Philippines reads as, so this certificate is presented to Wally Pacholka for his invaluable insights, experiences, and expertise shared with the participants of the online talk entitled The Night Sky Over America's Beautiful National Parks, held as part of the ALP Astronomy Expert Speaker Series of 2023, given this 29th day of October, 2023. Signed by Mr. James Kevin T., President, and Dr. Jose Francisco Aguilar, Vice President.
Wow.
So,
Wow, that's fantastic. Thank you.
okay.
Really
So, but
appreciate
before,
that.
oh, okay. Well, thank you, Wally. But before we let you go, Wally, may we have a group picture with you? And maybe we can ask James if you could.
James, Andrew, you also make a backup group shot also. Can you also make a backup while I'll take a shot? Edwin, can you move a little closer to Imelda? No. Your face, your head closer together. Yeah, okay, that. Yeah. Okay. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Wait. 1, 2. One more. 1, 2. Okay, got it. Thank you. Thank you, Wally, for giving
Thank,
us a very beautiful talk.
Thank you. Thank you, Wally.
Thank you.
you're most welcome.
Wally, thank you
Thank
so
you,
very,
everyone.
very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take
You're welcome,
care.
Thank you,
Mother.
Wally.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's been
Thank
great.
you.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay. So before we conclude today's webinar, I would like to thank all of our attendees for joining us. We will be sending out the certificates of attendance for today's webinar by email to all registrants who are able to join us today. This is the 19th, or is it 20th, webinar in our ALP Astronomy Expert Speaker Series since we started last year. Our first speaker was the late Dr. J. Pasakoff on April 23, 2022. Our other esteemed speakers since then were Mr. Zolt Live, Mr. Joe Rao, Mr. Fred Espenak, Mr. Robert Reeves, Mr. Ken Crawford, Mr. David Eicher, Professor Matthew Barlow, Mr. Scott Roberts, Father Christopher Corbally, Mr. David Levy, Mr. J. Kelly Beatty, Imelda Johnson and Edwin Aguirre, Dr. Daniel Green, Dr. Heidi B. Hamill, Dr. Deborah Elmegreen, Brother Robert Mackey, Brother Guy Consolmagno, Hilary Andales, Dr. Valentin Pillay, and today, Mr. Wally Pacholka. We are so grateful to all of our webinar speakers who very generously gave their precious time to share their knowledge and expertise to the world amateur astronomical community. And we in the Astronomical League of the Philippines are so proud and honored that we can sponsor these talks. So we can never thank all of our speakers enough. For those who missed out on our previous ALP Astronomy Experts speaker series, you can view the video recordings of our past webinars at your convenience at our official ALP YouTube channel, such as shown here. So in YouTube, just search for Astronomical League of the Philippines, and you will see all of the webinars, the previous webinars that we've had. Okay, so moving to the next set of speakers. For December 16, we have confirmed Mr. Robert Nemiroff, who is the co-founder and co-editor of NASA's highly popular Astronomy Picture of the Day. So he will be our presenter for December 16. And also be on the lookout for our other speakers that we will confirm their specific dates and times of when they will be available. So this would be Dr. Mike Brown, who is a planetary scientist at Caltech, or the California Institute of Technology. And we have Dr. Meg Uri, astrophysicist at Yale University and expert on extragalactic astronomy. So be on the lookout for these. And also mark your calendars for December 16 for the talk by Robert Nemiro. So on behalf of the Astronomical League of the Philippines, we want to thank everyone for attending. So for those in the Philippines, have a great rest of the day. For those in the Americas, have a good night. And take care. And of course, clear skies ahead. So thank you once more. And we'll be concluding this webinar. Thanks.